There were 16 seconds between my new life and the old one I buried. That's how long her voicemail lasted. Just 16 seconds. The time it takes to microwave bad coffee or delete a message you know you shouldn't hear again. But I didn't delete it. I've listened to it 37 times now. Clay, it's me. I know I'm the last person you ever want to hear from. But something's happened. I need to tell you the truth. It's about what I did. And something else. Please. Beep. That was it. That was all she said before the recording cut off. No callback number. No explanation. No apology. Just my ex-wife's voice hitting me like a freight train 5 years after she disappeared from my life, like a shadow at sunrise. Let me make one thing clear. Jessa McClain cheated on me, wrecked me emotionally, and left like a thief in the night. No warnings. No arguments. No, we need to talk. One day she was there. The next day, her toothbrush was gone. Her clothes were gone. The framed photos from the hallway? Gone. She even took the backup hard drive from my desktop. I didn't even notice that until months later. The voicemail came in last Tuesday. I remember because I was folding laundry. That's the sad kind of life I've lived since her. Tuesdays are for laundry. Thursdays are for frozen dinners. Saturdays are for overthinking. And now, apparently, Tuesdays are also for hauntings. I didn't recognize the number. It wasn't saved, obviously. She'd changed everything after the divorce. New name, new address, new city. It was like she had buried me and written a new story where I never existed. But that voice. There's no mistaking that voice when you've once heard it whisper, "I love you," and later scream, "You're suffocating me," in the same month. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake replaying every possible reason she could be calling me after 5 years of silence. Was someone dead? Was she dying? Was it guilt? Or was this just a sick new way to twist the knife she left in my ribs? The next morning, I drove 2 hours to my old storage unit. I hadn't touched the boxes labeled JM since the day I packed them. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe closure. Maybe confirmation I hadn't imagined her into a villain just to survive. Inside one of the boxes was an envelope I'd never seen before. It was addressed to Clayton for if I ever vanish. I swear to you, I'm not making this up. It had my name in her handwriting. Her real handwriting. The kind I'd seen on grocery lists and birthday cards, and once, a sticky note on my steering wheel that said, "Drive safe. You idiot. I love you." I stared at it for 5 minutes before I opened it. And when I did, my knees buckled. Inside the envelope were 2 things. A photograph of Jessa with a man I didn't recognize, dated 3 years before we met. A receipt for something she swore she never had. I hadn't even called her back yet. But I already knew. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. This was about everything. I sat in my car for over an hour, staring at that photograph like it held the answers to a question I didn't know how to ask. The man standing next to Jessa in the photo looked smug. That's the only way I can describe it. Not smiling, not posing, just standing slightly behind her, like he was hiding in plain sight. Jessa's arm was looped through his like they'd done it 1,000 times before. And the date? The date scrawled on the back in blue pen said March 15th, 2012. Exactly 3 years before she told me she moved to the U.S. from Vancouver. She lied about when she came here. That might seem like nothing. But when your ex-wife, the same one who told you she had no real past, no family left, no one but you, suddenly appears in a photo 3 years before she claimed she even arrived in the country, and with a man who looked like he'd been a part of her life far longer than you had. That's not nothing. That's a detonator. The receipt was worse. It was for a storage locker, one in a city I'd never even been to. Paid for in cash, under the name Jessica Marin. Jessa always claimed she hated her birth name, said it sounded like a librarian or an insurance agent. But that name, Jessica Marin, I recognized it. Not from her stories. From a warning. A few months after our divorce, I'd received a message on Facebook from a woman I didn't know. Her profile was private. Her photo was a blurry dog. She said, "If your ex ever went by the name Jessica, you should know she's not who she says she is. Be careful." I deleted the message. Thought it was a troll. I blocked her and moved on. I didn't realize I had just walked past the smoking gun. Back in my apartment, I sat at my kitchen table with the photo, the receipt, and her voicemail playing on a loop in my head. "I need to tell you the truth," she'd said. "It's about what I did." My first instinct was to ignore it, to throw it all in a drawer and pretend it never happened. I was finally stable. I had a job, a therapist, a cat that hated me slightly less than she did last year. I had me back. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't rot in silence. It festers. It itches. And once it starts whispering, you can't pretend you don't hear it. So, like an idiot, I called her back. No answer. Of course. But 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. She texted me. Just 5 words. Meet me. Tomorrow. Alone. No location. No time. Just a message. Like we were in a spy movie or something. Like I hadn't spent 5 years rebuilding my soul just for her to yank it into a blender. I didn't respond. Not immediately. I paced around my apartment for hours, playing out every scenario in my head. She was sick. She was in danger. She was being chased. She was pregnant. She had a kid. She was dying. She had killed someone. She wanted forgiveness. She wanted to ruin me again. And the worst part? A part of me, the most pathetic, self-loathing part of me, wanted to go. Because I needed answers. Because I needed her to say it out loud. What she did, why she left, who she really was. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the floor with the lights off, holding that photo like it was a crime scene. Because maybe it was. Maybe I was the crime scene. Maybe I'd been one all along. At 6:12 a.m., she texted again. Parking lot. Old train station. 9 p.m. You'll want to hear this. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, I said yes. I arrived an hour early. The old train station hadn't been in use for years. Just an empty lot, rusted tracks, and a bench that looked like it gave up trying to be useful sometime during the Bush administration. I parked my car across the street, engine off, headlights dead, trying not to breathe too loudly. It felt like I was waiting for a ghost, not a person. I told myself I was there for answers. That's it. Not closure. Not connection. Just answers. At 9:03, she showed up. I saw her before she saw me. She pulled in with the lights off, a gray hatchback I didn't recognize, parked crooked like she didn't care if it rolled into the weeds. When she stepped out, it was like watching a reflection that didn't quite move the way I remembered. She looked older, tired, hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup, not like the Jessa I knew. No fake lashes, no soft pink gloss, no carefully curated version of herself. Just raw, pale, real. For a moment, I hated her more for not trying. For showing up like she'd finally stopped pretending, while I had spent the last 5 years becoming a man made entirely of armor and therapy quotes. She spotted me and hesitated. Her hands went into her coat pockets, then came out. She looked like she was deciding whether to run. Part of me hoped she would, but she didn't. She walked over slowly, heels crunching the gravel. When she got close enough to speak, she looked me dead in the eyes and said 4 words that made my stomach twist. I was never alone. I waited for her to explain. She didn't. I don't know what that means, I said. It came out more defensive than I intended. She nodded slowly. Yeah, I figured you'd say that. We stood there, face to face, silent as the wind whipped through the empty tracks. I had so many things I wanted to scream. Why did you lie? Why did you leave? Who the hell are you? But instead, I just asked the most pitiful thing imaginable. Why now? She glanced down, then back at me. Because you deserve to know the truth before someone else tells it their way. That line didn't make sense, but I let her keep going. She pulled out her phone. I tensed, stupidly imagining she might record me, or worse. But she just held it up and opened the photo gallery. Then she handed it to me. On the screen was a photo of a child. A girl, maybe 4 years old. Blonde hair. Eyes like mine. Eyes I'd seen in the mirror 1,000 times when I was too tired to fight anymore. She's not yours, Jessa said. But they think she is. I swear my knees almost gave out. What the hell does that mean? I asked, louder than I should have. Who is they? And why would they think? She's my niece, she cut in. Sort of. It's complicated. And dangerous. And connected to everything. To why I left. To why I had to disappear. That's when she looked behind her. Not like someone nervous, but like someone followed. Her shoulders stiffened. Her eyes scanned the tree line. Then she leaned in and whispered, "They're going to find you, Clay. Because of me. And when they do, you need to be ready." What the hell are you talking about? I said again, but she was already walking away. I grabbed her arm. Jessa, stop playing games. Who are you running from? She looked back at me, and for the first time that night, and maybe ever, I saw fear in her eyes. Not guilt. Not shame. Not sorrow. Fear. She leaned in and said just one word. A name I hadn't heard in over a decade. And that's when I knew this wasn't about betrayal anymore. This was about survival. She said the name so quietly, I almost thought I misheard her. Garrison. It hit me like ice water down my back. My first reaction wasn't fear, it was confusion. Because that name hadn't been spoken out loud in over 10 years, and certainly not by her. Garrison wasn't someone from our marriage. He wasn't an ex, or an old friend, or a buried fling. Garrison was someone from my past, long before Jessa. From a place I had intentionally scrubbed out of every version of my identity. Back then, I was living in a rundown part of East Lincoln with my brother, Reed, who had a knack for making bad deals with worse people. I was 19. He was 26. We were broke, angry, and invincible. The kind of stupid invincible that only comes with age and desperation. Garrison was one of the men Reed owed money to. But Garrison didn't deal in cash. He dealt in favors. You didn't pay him back with bills. You paid him back with silence, loyalty, and compliance. Or else. I never owed Garrison directly, but Reed dragged me into one of his messes. Just once. Just one job. A drop-off. I was told not to ask questions. I was young, terrified, and an idiot. I did it. I never told anyone what was in that case. I didn't even look. I just handed it over, took the envelope, and Reed said we were square. I moved cities a month later. I changed my phone, my address, my name. I buried that part of my life like a corpse and never looked back. Until now. You don't mean that, Garrison, I said slowly, hoping, begging, for her to say no. For her to laugh. Tell me it was a different guy, a different name, some tragic coincidence. But she didn't. She just nodded and took a step back, like saying his name out loud might summon something from the shadows. How do you even know about him? I asked, my voice cracking under the weight of memory. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was crinkled, stained, torn at the corners. She held it like it was radioactive. I wasn't who I said I was when we met, Clay. I was hiding, too. I took the paper and opened it slowly. At first, it didn't make sense, a list of names. Mine was on it. So was Reed's. So was hers. A few were crossed out. Some were underlined. And next to mine, in blue ink, it said, debt moved to asset. Silence broken. Pending. I don't even remember how long I stared at it. She explained, in bursts, like it hurt to say too much too fast. Garrison never stopped tracking the people he considered investments. I wasn't just a memory in his books. I was a file. A loose end. When Reed disappeared 4 years ago, I assumed it was drugs. Or suicide. Or both. I never asked. Never followed up. But Jessa did. She found out Reed didn't disappear. He was taken. And Garrison didn't just want silence anymore. He wanted control. Of her. Of me. Of anyone who'd seen too much or walked away too easily. And now, somehow, Jessa had gotten herself tangled in the same net I thought I'd escaped. Whether she followed the trail out of guilt or survival, I don't know. Maybe both. Maybe she always knew, and that's why she left. Maybe it wasn't just betrayal. Maybe it was self-preservation, a betrayal of love to stay alive. But here's the worst part. That little girl in the photo? She wasn't her niece. Jessa lied. Again. Because after all that, when I looked closer at the photo, at the kid's face, the shape of her jaw, the curve of her eyes, she didn't just look like me. She looked like Reed. And suddenly the word niece felt more literal than I ever expected. And if that girl was his daughter, then Garrison wouldn't be the only one looking for her. He'd be looking for all of us. By the time I got back to my apartment, it was after midnight, and the world felt tilted. Everything was off. The lights seemed too dim. The silence, too loud. The air, too heavy. I stood in the kitchen with the fridge open for no reason at all, just staring at a bottle of mustard like it had answers. I couldn't process what I'd just heard. That my brother wasn't missing. That he might be dead, or worse, alive under someone else's control. That Jessa had known things about my past I never told anyone, not even my therapist. That she might have left me not out of cruelty, but to protect a child that might not even be hers. And then came the part that made my heart start racing again. Who the hell put my name back on Garrison's list? I hadn't made contact. I hadn't spoken his name. I'd moved cities. Changed jobs. I hadn't even thought about that world in years. But that note, debt moved to asset. Silence broken. Meant someone had triggered a reaction. And if there's one thing I know about Garrison, he doesn't forgive. He forgets even less. That night, I did something I told myself I'd never do. I went into the crawl space under my building. Buried behind rusted Christmas decorations and boxes of junk, I had a black duffel bag duct-taped shut. Inside was my disaster file. The one I swore I'd never open unless something from the old life came crawling back. Copies of ID. Names I used once. Phone numbers that no longer worked. A USB with encrypted files I never cracked. And a prepaid burner phone that somehow still held a charge after all these years. I stared at it for a long time. Then I powered it on. One number was saved in the contacts. I didn't even need to ask myself who it was. Darren Valco, my brother's old contact. Used to be a mechanic by trade, but was more like a shadow broker in reality. He knew things. He watched things. And then, in 2018, he died. Or at least, that's what I was told. Overdose. Unclaimed body. Cremated. But I never saw a death certificate. Never went to a funeral. Reed said it was taken care of. And back then, I didn't ask for details. Now, I needed them. I dialed the number. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. I was about to hang up when someone answered, but didn't say anything. Just heavy breathing on the other end. Not like a prank call. More like someone who hadn't used words in a while and was deciding if I was worth wasting them on. I said one word. Clay. Silence. Then, finally, a response. Low. Gravelly. Slight accent. Same voice I hadn't heard in almost a decade. Did she tell you? I froze. Who? Jessa? She wasn't supposed to. That changes things. I swallowed hard. So you're alive. Not really. Not for them. Why is my name back on the list, Darren? Because someone opened a file they weren't supposed to. And now Garrison thinks you broke the rules. What rules? I've been out. I've been clean. It's not about what you did, Clay. It's about what she did with your name. That sentence nearly knocked the air out of me. Jessa used my name? She made moves. Protected the kid. Bought time. Burned money. She forged paperwork and used your old ID. It bought her 3 years of silence. But silence costs more than blood now. And she didn't pay in full. I was shaking. What happens now? Darren exhaled sharply. Now? You disappear. Again. And this time, don't leave a trail. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because if what he said was true, if Jessa forged my name to protect that child, and Reed really was her father, then I had blood in this game whether I wanted to or not. And if Garrison thought that little girl was leverage, I wasn't just a man with a target on his back anymore. I was a weapon waiting to be pointed. I didn't sleep after the call with Darren. I sat at my kitchen table with the burner phone in one hand and the list Jessa gave me in the other, trying to make sense of what my life had become. It was like waking up to find out the ground under your house isn't just unstable. It's already caved in, and you're the only one who didn't hear the crash. I knew I should leave. Pack a bag. Cut ties. Go dark like I did before. But there was a problem with that plan. Her name was Sophie, the little girl in the photo, the one Jessa called her niece, but who looked like Reed. And now, if Darren was right, Jessa had used my name to forge documents, to keep Sophie hidden, safe, and off Garrison's radar. Except now she was on it. And if Sophie really was my niece, running wasn't an option. Not this time. Around 10 a.m., my building's fire alarm went off. No fire. No smoke. Just the gut-splitting wail echoing through the walls, forcing every tenant to evacuate into the parking lot in bathrobes and slippers. I stood outside in the October cold, arms crossed, squinting at the building like it owed me an explanation. Then I saw him. A man across the street, leaning against a red pickup truck. Aviator sunglasses, tan jacket, sipping from a gas station coffee cup like he had all the time in the world. He wasn't looking at the building. He was looking at me. When our eyes met, he nodded. Just once. Not friendly. Not threatening. Just noted. 15 minutes later, the fire department cleared the building. False alarm. System glitch, they said. I went back inside, heart still hammering. From my living room window, I looked out across the street. The truck was gone. I figured maybe I was being paranoid. Until I found the envelope. It was slid halfway under my front door. Plain white. No stamp. No name. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. Taken through my window. Me. On the couch. From last night. Burners in one hand. List in the other. On the back, written in blocky black marker. Nice cat. Sophie? My blood turned to ice. Not because they knew I had a cat. That was public enough. But because the name, Sophie wasn't written anywhere in my home. I never said it out loud. I hadn't told a soul, not even in text, not even when I was talking to Darren. Someone had been listening. Inside, I tore through the apartment like a man possessed. Checked the fire alarm, the lamp, the electrical outlets. I ripped apart the smoke detector and found it. A tiny black listening device lodged in the back. Taped inside, barely visible. I dropped it in the sink and smashed it with a wrench until it was plastic dust. My phone rang 5 minutes later. Unknown number. I answered. Silence. Then a slow, gravelly voice I didn't recognize. We don't like when people destroy gifts, Clay. I froze. Who is this? Think of me as the cleanup crew. You're making a mess. What do you want? We want what you've always had and never deserved. He hung up. I stood there for a long time, phone still in hand, the taste of copper in my mouth. Then it hit me. They weren't just watching me. They were studying me. Every move I made. Every connection I'd rebuilt. Every file I thought I'd buried. And if they knew about Sophie, if they knew about the forged name, the ties to Jessa, the bloodline, then this wasn't just about punishing a runaway woman or silencing a loose end. It was about ownership. Of people. Of names. Of children. I had spent 5 years thinking I was healing. But maybe I'd just been marinating. And now, the butcher was ready. I couldn't go back to sleep, couldn't sit still, couldn't even look at my cat without wondering if someone was watching me through the walls. I packed a bag without knowing where I was going. Not because I had a plan. I didn't. I just knew I had to get out, and fast. But before I left, I made one call. I used the burner and dialed the only other number it had stored, Reed. It went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I tossed the phone in the garbage disposal and turned it on until the sparks kicked up and the smell of burning plastic filled the kitchen. Whatever game Jessa had dragged me into, whatever I thought I knew about the people I'd buried in my past, it was all unraveling now. And I couldn't even trust the walls around me. I left the apartment with nothing but my bag, some cash, and a vague idea of a name I hadn't said in 10 years. Nicolette Harrow. She used to work for Garrison, not in the brutal way, but in the subtle way. Paperwork, logistics, documentation. She wasn't muscle. She was worse. She made the bad things look legal. Reed always said she had a conscience. Once, before she started cashing his checks. Last I heard, she got out. Bought a house up north. Ghosted everyone. But ghosts tend to find each other. It took 6 hours, one broken gas station Wi-Fi connection, and a thread of names through an old encrypted document Jessa once tried to delete from my backup drive. But I found her. Not a full address, but a P.O. box. And a habit. Nicolette still went to the same coffee shop every Thursday, 3 p.m. sharp. So I went there. I sat 2 booths back and waited. And she showed. Older. Slimmer. Dyed red hair. She ordered mint tea and sat with her back to the wall. The moment I approached, her expression didn't change, but her fingers wrapped tightly around the ceramic mug like she was deciding whether to smash it or drink from it. I didn't ask for permission. I sat across from her and placed the photo of Sophie on the table. The original, not a copy. I need you to tell me who she is, I said. Nicolette didn't blink. She looked at the photo, then at me, then back at the photo, and then she said something that made the whole world tilt sideways. She's not Jess's, and she's not Reed's. I couldn't speak. My tongue went dry in my mouth. She slid the photo back. She's yours, Clay. Yours and Jess's. I laughed. Out loud. A sharp, bitter thing that startled the barista across the room. That's impossible, I said. We never. You were drugged, she said softly. Once. Just once. Jessa didn't know it until later. She found out the hard way. I froze. She planned to tell you. The night she left. But she was already in deep. She used your name to protect the child because she knew. If they found out she existed, she'd become a weapon. And they'd use her to bring you back under. I couldn't breathe. Not because I believed her, but because a part of me did. Too many details. Too many moments where Jessa had looked at me like she was choking on a secret. Nicolette leaned in closer. They're coming for the girl now. Because Garrison thinks she's leverage over Reed. But they're wrong. He's gone. And now, she's the last thread connected to your name that matters. Why are you telling me this? Because I kept the birth certificate. She pulled out a folded document from her purse and handed it to me. And there it was. Sophie Alohan Rossner. My last name. My middle name. Born 2 months before Jessa vanished. No one else knows, Nicolette whispered. But they will. And if you don't move now, if you don't get to her first. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just a man with a past anymore. I was a father with a target. And my time was running out. I drove all night. No music. No stops. Just me, the hum of tires on asphalt, and a birth certificate folded in the passenger seat like it weighed 50 pounds. The address Nicolette gave me wasn't Jess's, not anymore. It belonged to an older woman named Loretta James, someone Jessa trusted with her life and apparently with Sophie's too. The house was tucked behind a broken fence on the edge of a sleepy Oregon town, the kind of place where nothing ever happens, which is exactly why she chose it. I pulled up just after 6 a.m., parked down the street, and walked the last few blocks, heart pounding, head full of every worst-case scenario I'd ever imagined. I expected resistance. A locked door. A shotgun. A screaming guardian telling me to get off her property. Instead, I got the opposite. The woman, Loretta, opened the door before I knocked. She looked like she'd been waiting. Silver hair, tired eyes, hands steady. "You're early," she said. "I didn't sleep." She nodded, stepped aside, and let me in. I'll skip the small talk. It didn't matter. Not in the shadow of what I was about to see. She led me to a room at the back of the house. Soft yellow light. Stuffed animals. A tiny bookshelf. And in the corner, sleeping soundly beneath a blanket patterned with stars. Sophie. 4 years old. Peaceful. Whole. Safe. It was like looking into a mirror and seeing the one version of myself that never got broken. I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember crying. But I must have, because when Loretta brought me a tissue, my shirt was soaked. "She doesn't know?" I whispered. "She will," she said. "When the time's right. And now that you're here, maybe sooner." A few hours later, Jessa arrived. No drama. No mystery. Just her, in a hoodie and jeans, looking like a woman who'd lived 100 lives in the span of one. We sat on the porch. No cops. No running. Just the weight of what we'd been through between us. "I lied to protect her," she said. "And to protect you." "I know," I said. She looked surprised. "I hated you," I added. "For so long." But it wasn't the cheating. It wasn't the disappearing. It was the silence. "I know," she whispered. "That's the part one regret. We didn't make promises. There was no reunion, no magical moment of reconciliation. But there was truth. Real, unfiltered, painful, and necessary truth. And sometimes, that's more healing than any apology." A week later, I filed for guardianship. Jessa gave her consent. Said she wanted Sophie to have a father who could give her what she couldn't anymore: stability. A real name. A chance. Garrison? Gone. Word came through Darren 2 days later. Heart attack, reportedly. Some say it wasn't natural. Doesn't matter. The list is gone. The eyes are off us. The weight's been lifted. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if Sophie will ever call me dad. But I know I'll be there for the nightmares. For the first scraped knee. For the birthday candles, and the school plays, and the inevitable heartbreaks. And maybe, just maybe, I'll be a better man because I learned what it means to lose everything and still get a second chance.